What's up, Fever Nation? I'm Alex Golden.
And I'm Casey Johnson.
And welcome back to another episode here of the Fever Focus podcast. And we have a fun one today, Casey, because Pat Boylan is back, reoccurring guest now officially. And we have a very great discussion with him as we're kind of at the halfway point of the Fever season.
Yeah, absolutely. Always fantastic to have Pat on. I believe he is actually our first recurring guest, which is super awesome. And actually, something hit me about halfway through recording this interview, but it wasn't tasteful to throw it in. The last time that we had Pat on, which was the first time we had Pat on, was the last time in my old house that I had all of the stuff up on the walls before we took it down. And just by pure happenstance, we ended up having Pat on once I got my new office all the way fully set up. So it's kind of serendipitous.
Yeah, I love it. We've got all the Pacers stuff right directly behind you. And then to your right, if you're looking at the screen, probably to your left, we've got the Fever corner. And just kind of working my way from top to bottom, it looks like we've got a Sophie Cunningham autograph photo up there with a Fever basketball, which looks very incredible.
Yeah, and can I just say, before anybody says anything, that framed photo of Sophie Cunningham, scantily clad as it is, was a gift from me to my wife for Christmas that now lives in my office. So that was from me to my wife. So before you judge, it was a good value, you know?
Hey, I am not here to judge. I think it's great that your wife is as big of a Sophie Cunningham fan as you are, and she is having a great season, as Pat Boylan talks about here later in the podcast. But maybe I can't see everything else, so can you kind of walk us through what else is on your Fever shelf over here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a couple of books, one of which is about Anne Myers Drysdale. Then below that is where it begins to get like tastefully unfevery to an extent. I've got the signed photo of Megan McConnell from when we did the meet and greet with her, right next to a card of TJ. So I've got the McConnells together. Beneath that, I have signed Tamika Catchings. I have a couple signed things by Furf. And then the limited edition Fever Cheez-Its.
Let's go.
That are there. And then I've got some other Fever stuff over here. I've got a signed thing from Caitlin, and I've also got a signed thing with all of the records from her rookie season over there. I got a couple of signed Caitlin things like right before her autograph like ridiculously took off in value. So I got to it right at the right at the right time. But yeah, at some point I'll take you on a full tour of it, because there's a lot of really interesting stuff back there, like my thing from Reggie's jersey retirement, and all different kinds of stuff back over there. This Reggie thing over here is signed, so that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see it from where I'm at, but I think it would be great to get like a close-up video. Maybe you can do that on your phone sometime and kind of walk us through it, and we can use that as like a YouTube short or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And the cool stuff's in the living room anyway. So
all right, so we get a little sneak peek of the outside the office merchandise wall for Casey Johnson. So I'm excited about that. And I have to ask, last question: do you have the Fever or the Caitlin Clark book by Robin Lundberg?
It is still not out yet. It's coming out in mid-August, so it will absolutely be here in a place of distinction. It'll probably take the place of the orange book that's right there. I'll move it down, put it with the rest of the books, and then that one will definitely go there.
Perfect. I wasn't sure when that was coming out. For some reason, I thought it was coming out mid-July, or it came out mid-July, but I didn't know if you had like a pre-order and then got an early copy of it. But August is when you can kind of check that book out, and he does a great job covering the Fever for Fever on SI and then women's basketball on Sports Illustrated. So good stuff there. But anything you want to say before we kind of go right into our conversation with Pat?
August 25th, by the way. I just
okay. 2 days before my birthday. Great birthday present if you guys want to get that for me.
Dude, you'll get like 10 copies of it.
Hey, let's go. I'll give them out as gifts.
No. What I'll just say, I so appreciate Pat and his time. I appreciate the extent to which he goes in depth with all of these questions. He's always such a good interview. And I also appreciate his willingness not to shy away from any topics. There will be a lot of times when you're interviewing people. I've seen this in countless disciplines, wherein you will ask them a question like, hey, what about this thing? And they're like, oh my goodness, is that a squirrel outside my window? And you don't really get that with Pat. He covers everything. He answers every question, and he tackles tough topics in a tactful way, especially right at the end of our time with him. So can't say enough about Pat. Can't thank him enough for being here on this show, and we can't wait for you to hear it.
Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a very in-depth conversation with the great Pat Boylan right after this. All righty, everybody. Joining us once again on the Fever Focus podcast, it is the great Pat Boylan. Pat, my oh my, what a season this has been so far. Just before we get into like any major questions, I'm kind of just curious, what is your, feel right now for where the team is currently at?
Good to be back with you guys. I think we were talking right before the beginning of the season, so it's always interesting to kind of reminisce back to that conversation and see where things are. And actually, it's been kind of a windy, twisty road to get here, but actually, frankly, this is kind of about where I thought the Fever would be. I think 14-9 is a good record. I've been surprised that there are 4 teams that have a better record than that, because 14-9 I think is a really good spot to be. But at the end of the day, I think you have to feel really good as of recording this here midweek, mid-July, just with where the Fever are trending. I think every trend line right now is pointing in the right direction. It's sports. We know that can always change. But, I think this team has overcome a lot of challenges at the beginning of the season. They've gone through a mini spurt without Caitlin Clark. They're working on integrating her back, and handled, frankly, a level of media attention that I don't know that there's another professional team in American sports that's handling quite something quite like this. So to be where they are, I think is really good. I think on your podcast at the beginning of the year, my thought was that this was going to be an elite offensive team. And then my question was, where is the defense going to be? And are they 12th, 10th, 8th, 6th, 4th? And the answer to that question, I think I said back on your podcast, was going to go a long way in determining where this team could be. And it's been this twisting, winding road where at portions of the season, the defense was even better than the offense. But as we're standing right now, at least as we're having this conversation right now, the Fever are the best team in the league offensively. They're 8th defensively. The defense has trended in the right direction. They're 3rd in net rating. I think that's a really good spot to be. So, at times it has felt like there have been a lot of challenges for this Fever team, and it's amazing kind of looking at things here just past the midway point of the season, looking at all those obstacles and challenges and going, they're in a pretty good spot.
So, over the years, how have you learned to compartmentalize different points of the season and take right now for what right now is? Because, there was certainly a point in this season where the vibes were not great, as it was, is this a 500 team or is this a slightly below 500 team somehow? And now, last 15, they are 10-5. And if you look at that, as a chunk of the season, that's really promising, but also you still have all of the weight that came from having to figure things out early in the system. How long do you usually take before you kind of hit reset, or when do you know when the right point is to reset, in the way that you think about a team?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question for a few reasons. First of all, I will say this, just watching practices and being around the team in the areas that I'm fortunate to get to be around them, I always felt like the vibes were really good. Now, of course, they were going through some challenges. Of course, there were points at the season where your record maybe wasn't quite where you wanted it to be. No question, all those things true. But I just had an overarching belief in this team for many reasons. One of them, you have this transcendent superstar as your point guard. Now, as long as she stays healthy, of course, for the most part, she has this season. She's looked like a top 5 player at bare minimum this season. And that is a major point of optimism. In general, if you can keep your big 3 healthy. We're talking fresh off the heels of Kelsey Mitchell being Eastern Conference Player of the Week. She's been wonderful. Aliyah Boston is having the best season of her career while playing her fewest minutes. And Stephanie White coached teams. If you look at the WNBA teams she's coached, almost as a rule, are better in the second half of seasons than in the first half. Let's even look at last year's Fever team. I think for a lot of the season, once Caitlin Clark went down, most people thought that's going to be too hard to overcome. The results were off and on. And then, all of a sudden they get a little hot at the end of the season. They hang around late in game 3 in Atlanta and steal it. They win 1 against Las Vegas. All of a sudden, this team is overtime away from a WNBA Finals without Caitlin Clark, which is a remarkable, remarkable feat. So all of those things, to use the vibes word, I always felt like those were good. I won't name them on this podcast, but I've been around teams that the vibes haven't always felt quite so good. So I feel like I do have a good compare and contrast there. And I really do think that's important. That goes a long way. That helps build consistency. But I am a big cautioner of what I say over and over and over again to be small sample size. There's just, especially in a WNBA season, you play a couple of weeks and then people want to draw these drastic conclusions. Like you need to let a month happen. You need to let a month and a half happen. You need to let 2 months happen. Here we are. Now we're 2 months into the season. I think the Fever are in a pretty good spot. The only thing I will say is, as I found like the correct balance for that, or as I've attempted to find the correct balance for that, I think it's still a little bit of work in progress because during the Pacers season, when you're 20 games through, you're a fourth the way through the year. In the W season, you're about half the way through. And we remember that run the Pacers went on. They really struggled for 20 plus games there a couple seasons ago and then got it together. I don't think you can do that in the WNBA, at least at that level, because you just don't have as many games. So there is an increased importance. Basically every game counts as double in the WNBA than in the NBA. So I think it's much more important in the WNBA to avoid digging yourself in a hole. But while there's certainly were portions in the first 2 months where time seemed a little tough and the record didn't always seem where you wanted it to be, they never dug themselves into a hole. And I thought that was really, really important as well. And so, for me, if it's the NBA, maybe you're looking at the 25, 30 game mark where you really feel like you've got a good sample size. And the WNBA, maybe that's more like 15-ish games. And for this Fever team now, we're talking about a team that's just begun the second half of a season. So I certainly think you have it now, and you're in a good spot, and you've got a homestand coming up, and a really important one, I think, to continue to lay the foundation and continue to build the momentum that you've built here in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, now that we are halfway into the season, I am curious, what has been the biggest surprise about this Fever team to you? Whether it's a player, a lineup that's worked well, or something behind the scenes that fans may not realize. What is something that has, been the biggest surprise about this team?
I got to be honest, I can't say there's a ton of huge shocks to me because what Caitlin Clark, Aliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell are doing, I was fully expecting. I thought we were going to see this version of Sophie Cunningham last year. She got injured at the beginning of the season, took her a while to get back to form. If you remember, she got red hot for about a month and then got hurt again. So, again, knock on wood here. And it is a wood desk in case you're curious. The Fever have had much better injury luck this year. Cunningham has been healthy. And she's playing tremendously, but it doesn't really surprise me. I was cautiously optimistic that Raven Johnson would be somebody that could really help this team year one. And as Ty Harris has stepped up the last few games, we'll see how Stephanie White handles the rotation. Maybe moderately surprised at just her professionalism and how ready to go she has been from the beginning. That doesn't mean she doesn't have rookie moments. Of course she does. That doesn't mean she doesn't have the ups and downs of a rookie season. Of course she does. But, you really shouldn't be surprised at a Dawn Staley product. So I'm not surprised from a Dawn Staley product. I think if you had me on this podcast 5 weeks ago, there was a stretch where actually the offense was rated lower than the defense. And if you had me on that, I would have been like, that's mind-boggling to me because I just was not really expecting that. But as we've put more games down and as the Fever have played more games, frankly, this is kind of about where I had them, right around this record, elite offensively, improving defensively, but still with some room to go. And, I think they're about where I hope they would be. And honestly, I think it's good that we're talking here in mid-July. And at least to me, you guys tell me if you think there's been a major one or maybe somebody that I'm missing. Sometimes you're so close to things that you have to zoom out a little bit and remember how things were at the beginning of the season. But to me, no major surprises. And when you're a good team and you have a lot of talent, that's kind of what you want, I think. So I don't mean to sidestep your answer, but I got asked that a couple of weeks ago on Dave Calabro's podcast, and I kind of had the same thought. Like there really aren't a ton of major surprises to me, which when you're good, I think is what you want. You would have liked to start the season a little bit better. I don't think many people would have thought that you'd go on this road trip and be 3-1. So I think that's kind of made up for it. But I like where they stand as we're chatting right now.
So One thing that I have thought was a little bit of a surprise as we move along into the season is the extent to which it has felt like the 4 spot has continued to be a little bit of an area of struggle, for this team. It's not necessarily somewhere you need a lot of stats production, but I have felt like they have been sort of struggling to figure out where does Monique Billings fit into this offense? Is Maisha Hines Allen in some points a better spot starter? Where do you put, maybe KK and Aliyah out there together? What has been your thoughts on where the 4 spot has kind of been so far this year? And do you think that maybe shoring that up a touch is a key to them getting to the next level?
Yeah, I think you talk about trend lines, and I really like where they are there because I think Monique Billings over the last 7 or so games has very much looked the part that you'd hope she would look. And I think, for her, it's a completely different role than she's ever played. Most players that come here play a completely different role than they've ever played because there's nobody really like Caitlin Clark. But also, when you come here, you've got 3 mega stars. And so you don't touch the ball quite as often. Your role is asked to be a little bit different. And I think that was a challenge, no question, at the beginning of the season. I think if we talked a month ago, there would have been a lot of evidence that maybe Maisha Hines Allen is looking like the potential for that. I don't know if she starts or not, but plays more minutes. She was playing more minutes than Monique Billings for a good stretch of time there. And this is no discredit to Maisha, who I thought fared very well, stepped up in a significant way, had a couple key moments in a couple key games, has been kind of the mental toughness at times when they have needed a little mental toughness, if you catch my drift. But I think Mo Billings is starting to slide into and understand the role and kind of how she works best in it. And I think a lot of that is important in understanding. It's not always things that show up on the box score, although yes, blocks and steals are stats. But like first and foremost, her defense is good, and it's been, I think, really good lately. And it's been a big reason why this team has taken a step forward. And then her finishing around the rim is the other thing that I think has been a lot better lately. And her ability, she's not going to be a major 3-point shooter, but that 3 that she hit in Las Vegas, I think, was picture perfect for what you want out of her role, which is, listen, she's not going to spread the floor a ton, but if nobody's going to guard her out there in the corner, she's got to be able to hit that at a semi-decent clip. And I think she's been doing that. So to answer your question, yeah, I think the trend line on Monique Billings and how the 4 spot works continues to be a work in progress. But I think they're wildly better off now in that area than they were a few weeks ago. I think continued improvement, yes, is very important. The nice thing too is I think you've got a lot of roster flexibility. And I think the lineups, when Stephanie White wants to play a Sophie Cunningham as a small ball 4, that's really tough to guard too, especially when you've got 4 shooters. If it's Caitlin and Kelsey and Lexi and Sophie, I mean, that's a really tough perimeter to defend. Oftentimes, I think you see that lineup when the Fever are trying to get back into games, and fortunately, they haven't needed that quite as much over their last few. But yeah, I don't think that has been totally solved, and I still think there is work to do. But I think the trend line there has been good, and Monique Billings has had a couple games too where she's rebounded at a really, really high level. And it's interesting because at the beginning of the season, there was so much talk about the Fever and their ability to rebound, and there were a lot of people that thought the Fever were too small and that they weren't going to be a good rebounding team. They've been first in the league in rebounding all season long. Monique Billings is a really good rebounder, and I think she deserves a lot of credit for that. So yeah, I think they are in a spot where things are evolving, but evolving in a positive direction.
So this is a tough conversation to have because it seems like it's more on social media than it is actually in what analysts are talking about. But when you kind of see where this team is at with Caitlin on the floor and when she's not on the floor in terms of the success the team has had when she doesn't play, right? But then also, I mean, they're still having success when she does play, but it's not been maybe as what the Fever maybe wanted all the way, from it's just been a lot to navigate with her injuries and things like that. So the right way to ask this, I guess, is why do you think they're able to have so much success when she isn't playing? And then how are they kind of dealt with this injury and the back and forth of her being in and out of the lineup and kind of handled all that chemistry?
Let me start this by saying, so I don't get Brian Windhorst incorrectly aggregated here. The Fever are unquestionably a better team with Caitlin Clark on the floor. The Fever, in my mind, no doubt need Caitlin Clark healthy to win a championship. And her health is maybe the most critical and vital piece of this whole season. If you could only pick one specific thing, it's a team sport. There are team aspects that are very important, but the Fever need her healthy. I think if you dive into the numbers just a little bit deeper, you start to see some areas where the stats to me don't tell the full story. She, yes, played in the game against Phoenix, but went out early in the third quarter, a game where it should have been Alyssa Thomas that went out. The Fever get a loss there when Caitlin Clark plays, but that's a close game that she doesn't finish. That falls under a loss in the Caitlin Clark win-loss column. But in all reality, if she plays the rest of that game, it was a 2-point game. I'm talking about the loss in against Phoenix back in Indianapolis. The Fever, in my opinion, almost assuredly win that. The game in Los Angeles, Caitlin Clark plays 16 minutes, never more than 3 or 4 minutes at a time. She's just getting back up to speed. That's not a full Caitlin Clark game. That goes in the lost column as well, which to me is unfair. I also think if you look at how the team is performing offensively and the numbers they're putting up with and without, that shows you the difference. So they're unquestionably, in my opinion, I will sit here and argue with anybody till I'm blue in the face that Caitlin Clark makes this team not just better, but appreciably better. And again, just like they need Kelsey Mitchell and just like they need Aliyah Boston, they need Caitlin Clark to ultimately reach their ceiling. And when they've got all three, and when they're playing in a way where, Sophie Cunningham's knocking down shots and Monique Billings is filling her role well and Ty Harris is doing what she's doing, this team's ceiling is remarkably high. But one of the great silver linings of last year, you hope to never have to go through it. But it took this team a little while, but they figured out the best way to win when Caitlin Clark is not on the floor. And it's a very different style and brand of basketball. Ultimately, it's a style and brand of basketball where your ceiling is not as high, but it's with Aliyah Boston as a fulcrum of the offense. It's with Kelsey Mitchell and the ball in her hand even more. And so I think this team figured out the formula on how to be competitive without her last year, which I think is massively important for this season and those moments they don't have her. I think you can traverse weeks, days or weeks without Caitlin Clark. Traversing months without Caitlin Clark is a totally different story. And I think they've done a really excellent job of, okay, Caitlin Clark's out, and immediately, transitioning into the version of the team that ultimately had them an overtime away from the finals last year. I think that's been an underwritten story. Everyone wants to talk about, does this mean they're better with Caitlin Clark, without Caitlin Clark? To me, the story is, look how well this team has been able to transition on the fly for a few games and get back to how they won last year without her. But ultimately, no question, in my opinion, you need her.
Yeah, and one of my theories that I've had sort of as the season has been moving along, and they have been heavy quotes for the audio listeners, better without Caitlin Clark, because I think that's about as absurd as you think it is. I think that one thing that they are able to do is play a much more like systemy, appreciable style of basketball, where it's in some ways when Caitlin is out there, they are not playing like basketball by the X's and O's as we have officially. You've got to run so many ghost screens and things like that just to get Caitlin freed up in order to start the offense, that when she is gone, honestly, it's a little bit more resembling the basketball that we were all taught in elementary school when we first started learning the game. But to do that, you have to have somebody who can slot into that spot and be a point guard. And especially over the course of the last week and a half or so, that has been Ty Harris. And we've been singing her praises here on this show. If you're a point guard, your name is Ty, you come to Indianapolis, you've got to be good. And she is about as good of a team player as I have seen. She hunts her shot when she needs to, she sets everybody else up when she can. What have you seen from this veteran presence here in Ty Harris?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's an extremely important point, and I think the Fever don't have this level of success in this period without Caitlin Clark without her. I think that's unquestionably accurate. And I mean, gosh, I don't know her well, although she obviously is from the Indy area. Bria Goss, one of our analysts, knows her a lot better. But I felt so much pride sitting there courtside in Phoenix, watching her hit shot after shot after shot after shot, because the beginning of the season wasn't easy for her. You know, she's coming off an injury last year. She's not 100%. There aren't a ton of point guard minutes to go around when Caitlin Clark is at full health. And Raven Johnson really, shot out of a cannon at the beginning of the year. And I think Ty Harris wasn't, 100% physically and maybe mentally too, just in terms of trusting herself off of that injury she sustained last year. But boy, has she made an impact lately. And I agree with everything you're saying. Like, I will never pretend to be this basketball X's and O's guru, but when you watch the game when Caitlin Clark isn't available and you watch the games where she is available, it's definitely a different style. You talk about this, the parallels between these two teams, the Pacers and the Fever, it always strikes me just how many there are.
It's insane.
It's wild. And it begins at the point, right? I mean, I am slightly biased, but you have got the best vision passing player in the WNBA on the Fever, and you have got the best vision passing player in the NBA on the Pacers. And I will admit that it's fair to think that Jokic is maybe one there. But I mean, like at worst, like second for Tyrese Halliburton. And I think because of the position he plays, I'm putting him number one. And and they're both, great at those get ahead passes. They're both great at the outlet passes. And both teams are at their best when they're playing fast. Both teams are at their best when they're playing in transition. And both teams are at their best when they're not, sitting in the half court, pounding the ball, running the shot clock down. So with Caitlin Clark, it's let's play quick. Let's try to gain advantages with our speed. The fact that defenders have to guard Caitlin out to 35 feet opens up all sorts of other stuff if they want to do that. And if not, it opens up those logo bombs that we've gotten used to, and everything just kind of falls into place in transition when the ball's in her hand and you're moving up the floor. When you don't have her available, the answer to that question has seemingly, in my eyes, been Aliyah Boston is one of the most intelligent players in the world. She's not a guard, but she sees the game like a guard. And let's play through her as a fulcrum. Let's, allow the play to develop around her. And it opens up a lot of possibilities. She can take it herself, get to the rim. She can, pass to her teammates. And then you've got Kelsey Mitchell. And listen, while having Caitlin Clark not available is always, a difficult situation to overcome. And in my opinion, you can't play quite at the same level without her as you can with her. Putting the ball in Kelsey Mitchell's hands more is a pretty good plan B if you have to go to plan B. I think those two things have worked out well. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember last year tracking the Fever's pace when Clark was on the floor and when it was off, and when she was off the floor, or in games that she played and games she wasn't. And it was pretty drastic, and it shouldn't be lost among the WNBA fan base and the Fear fan base. It shouldn't be lost at how it's not exactly easy to go from playing one style of ball to the other quickly. And they've done so quickly. And that doesn't mean they don't want to look for, opportunities to run. They do. Raven Johnson's actually really good at that the get ahead pass as well, which I think having her this year helps, kind of keep the speed up, or at least give the Fever transition opportunities. But I'll give our statistician in Phoenix a lot of credit, because he handed me just an amazing note late in that game after Kelsey Mitchell laid the ball in. The Fever scored on 9 of their final 10 possessions. Now, they won that game they win it by 2 or 3? Off the top of my head, I can't.
3.
3, thank you. And so Kalia Copper's shooting to tie it, but they probably need to convert. If you just think about it, like, they probably need to convert on 8 or at least 7 out of 10 possessions down the stretch to win that game. And if they don't do it, they don't win it. And they converted on 9 out of 10 down the stretch, which is phenomenal. Much of that in the half court. To the earlier point, a lot of it, Ty Harris stepping up, Kelsey Mitchell stepping up, Aliyah Boston stepping up. You don't play end of game scenarios very often up and down, the floor at a high pace. The game tends to slow down late in games. So their ability to execute in those situations without Caitlin Clark in the half court, I really think goes back to last year and everything they learned about how to best look themselves when they don't have their top player.
So since we're talking about that game against Mercury, I have to go back to one of your tweets where you said, "This is my 12th season calling WNBA games, so I don't pretend to have seen it all, but this is the best block I've ever witnessed called," and that block from Michaela Timpson. Sophie Cunningham said she's never seen it happen in the W either. So talk to me about that block, what it was like to kind of see that in real time on the call, and then as you've seen that replay over and over again, the growth as well that she has taken, or the steps she's taken this year as a player with the growth that she's had as a player.
Gosh, it's so hard to pick a moment of the season so far because when I feed my mind that question, I immediately think of the Caitlin Clark game tying 3 off the Maisha Hines-Allen pass. I immediately think of the Caitlin Clark 36-footer or whatever she hit, I think against Golden State early in the year. But that moment to me is right there with them. That is a block that frankly, I don't has any you guys are maybe a little bit more online than I am. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But has anyone like I saw a few other people say, "Oh no, look, nobody saw this block from before," and it was a block of another player where she hit the ball from behind off the backboard. Not the same thing.
No.
Pinning the ball off the backboard and as far as pinning the ball off the backboard goes, coming from the opposite side of the rim, like you got to negotiate your way around the net to get there. I'd never seen it in the WNBA. I've never seen a block that good in the WNBA. And for it to come in a moment like that, Kalia Copper had blown by her defender. It was a layup. If that shot goes, again, memory, let's see. So Kelsey, then it was 10, and then it went to 7. So I believe Phoenix was up 7. Copper's driving. Copper's at the rim. Copper's like a top 3 player in the league at this when she gets her first step finishing at the rim. And she lays that in. It's a 9-point game. Timpson not only comes up with a massive block, but it wasn't like it was in the second quarter when the Fever were up by 20. It came at a moment where the Fever desperately needed it. And then what happens? They get the rebound, swing to Mitchell. She knocks down a 3. It's a 4-point game. All of a sudden you're going, the Fever can do this. If that block doesn't happen, it's a 9-point game. And look, the Fever still have a shot, but 9 versus 4 with 3-ish minutes to go is a totally different proposition. So as far as like unexpected heroism in a game, you expect Caitlin Clark to do the amazing because she does the amazing all the time. You expect Kelsey Mitchell to hit the game winner at the end of the game, or at least I did. You expect that shot from Aliyah Boston to put the Fever up by 1 late against Phoenix to go in, and it did. But do you expect, and I think she's a great prospect. She's done a great job, great find in the draft, hopefully be a longtime Fever player, really good defender, really good rebounder. But do you expect Michaela Timpson to do the unbelievable late in a game? At least I wasn't, and it's no disrespect to her. But for her to come up in that moment like that, it was so cool. And I just felt so good for her. And for it to cap off in the way that it did with the Kelsey Mitchell 3, you go, if I'm remembering the sequence correctly, you're down 10 with about 5 minutes left. You go Sophie Cunningham 3, Michaela Timpson, maybe the best block in WNBA history, Kelsey Mitchell 3, 10-point game down to 4. As far as regular season sequences go, now knowing that you win that game, that's up there with as good of a sequence as I've ever seen, and really cool for her to be a part of it. And I think Debbie, I can't remember if she said off air or on air because sometimes the lines blur a little bit when you're late and things like that. But she said, "Pat, I think I need to get a seatbelt for you. And well, that's because I couldn't believe what I just witnessed. And I'm not the type of announcer that typically, has his arms up in the air or is jumping out of my seat. I try to be collected, focused, and focused on the moment. But I'm pretty sure that block had me completely out of my seat because I've never seen anything like it. And what a moment for a young player in a massive, massive game against a rival on the road, second night of a back-to-back. Like, it's just all awesome.
And by the way, before I get to my actual question here, a quick follow-up because I want to get Pat in on my conspiracy theory because
Oh,
okay,
I am
listen,
notably anti-conspiracy theory before.
I think that you'll like this one though.
Yeah, you will.
Michaela Timpson can totally dunk, can't she? Like, there's no way that she can't. She has so much of a vertical, and I also want to point out early in the year, she had a breakaway layup, and Caitlin Clark came straight off the bench, giving her a big thumbs down afterwards, which means she wanted Michaela Timpson to dunk it. I mean, you've got to figure she's got the hops for it at this point, right? Like the vertical's there.
Let me just say, if she dunks at some point, I will not be surprised.
All right, I got you. I got you. Well, let me tell you what's not a surprise when I'm watching my Indiana Fever. That is when they go to Las Vegas or when Las Vegas is in town and Aliyah Boston takes it directly to the best player in the world in Asia Wilson and is able, I feel like, to handle her in a way that nobody else really is. And it's funny because I don't feel like a lot of people are really tracking the fact that this is taking place. Even, some of the announcers in the last game that they played was like an uncharacteristically bad night for Asia Wilson from the floor. Well, yes, but that's also because Aliyah Boston's one of the very few people who can contain her. How important is that particular matchup for a team that has championship aspirations?
You don't typically hear defensive performances called breathtaking, but I thought her defensive performance against Asia Wilson on Sunday night was breathtaking. This is the top player in the world. This is somebody who may go down as the greatest player of all time. 4 MVPs. She's coming off an MVP. The Aces are coming off a championship. Everybody has off nights. And by the way, just to give Asia Wilson some credit here, an off night for her still is 20-12. But your point is the efficiency. The efficiency was not there. 9 of 23 from the floor, which you take any day. If you're going to get 20 points out of Asia Wilson, but it's going to take 23 shots to get there, you'll take that any day. I thought her defensive performance was breathtaking. I thought she's just so, like, her intelligence, it was evident day one, but I will put it up against, at bare minimum, any big in the WNBA at bare minimum, and most, if not just about every guard. I mean, she sees the game at such a high level. Nobody has better footwork. Asia Wilson has some otherworldly athleticism abilities and parts to her game that are just jaw-dropping, and all you can do is make life tough. And it felt like for 23 shots, she made life really, really tough on her. And, there are not many players that you go up and say, this is a good matchup for a player as good as Asia Wilson. There's maybe only one or two of them in the WNBA. And that also doesn't mean the next time they play that Wilson might not have 30 plus. I mean, she's that good of a player, but I was just so, so impressed with what she did defensively. The Aces really never seemed, to get into major rhythm, maybe early third quarter there when they cut the lead down to, I think, as low as 4. And then the Fever went on that massive run and never really looked back. But, her defense, she gets credit for it. Maybe not enough, though. She's truly one of the top rim protectors in the league. But at least on this night, Asia Wilson defending MVP, but the best big on the floor on Sunday night was unquestionably, for that night, Aliyah Boston.
I will say, if we're going to do conspiracy theories here, Pat, just to stick with Aliyah Boston, while I think Caitlin Clark's the best player on this team, I think that Aliyah Boston might be the most important. That is my take on this team right now, just because of what she provides on both sides of the court. But I'm not going to make you respond to that because I know that it's very easy for you just to stay impartial and not say anything. So I want to move on. My last question for you, though, is as we're looking ahead to the second half of this season, uh, what's one storyline that you're watching, closely that you think could kind of define how the season is ultimately remembered?
Ultimately, it's their defense. It's the exact same answer I had for you guys at the beginning of the season. I was very confident at the beginning of the year that this was going to be an elite offense. It's been an elite offense. I think they just had their eighth game scoring 100 points. Eighth game scoring 100 points, and the WNBA record in a season is 11. Now we know. I'm going to sidetrack for a moment. There are years where the WNBA has played 32 games and 34 games and 36 games, and one of my pet peeves is when you use cumulative stats by like game 43 or 44 to say something happened in 44 games more than it happened in 32 games. We'll invariably see it again this year, but the Fever have a really good chance of breaking the record for the most points per game in a season, which is to me the more important one, or at least the more valuable one of the two, which is set by the 2010 Phoenix Mercury at 93.9. The Fever are right there. So they've been elite offensively like I thought they would. The question ultimately comes down to, where is the defense? If the Fever are first offensively and 12th defensively, they're a playoff team, but they're probably not a contender. If the Fever are first offensively and fourth defensively, they might be the best team in the league. Right now, they're first offensively and they're eighth defensively, which has them third in net rating, which means they're playing like the third best team in the WNBA. Record obviously is what counts, and they're fifth there. But I would argue that at least still at this point in the season, I would rather have the better net rating than the better record, because that is indicative of how you're playing top to bottom, and that tends to be where you finish the season. Net rating and record, let me make sure both my hands are on the screen. This is net rating at the beginning of the year. This is record at the beginning of the year, and they kind of converge. And by the end of the season, you want your record to be the better of the two if there is one. But right now, I think you're still kind of right here in that. So to be third in net rating, I think is a really good spot to be. The trend the defense is on is in a really good spot. I think if they can get that up to seventh, to sixth, to fifth, I mean, if we're talking near the end of the year and they're even fifth or sixth defensively, which again, I understand is not like necessarily jumping off the page when I say that, but that's how good the offense is. That's how many weapons they have on the offensive end. They just need to be pretty good defensively. Now, I want to be very, very clear here. This is me saying that. Stephanie White is not, viewing it the same way. When you're a coach, you can't view it that way. You have to strive to be the best defensive team in the WNBA. But as a broadcaster and somebody who, frankly, watched the Pacers do this a couple years ago, they were elite offensively. They really struggled defensively. But once their defense, got up to above mid-pack, the Pacers were wildly dangerous, and the Fever are starting to look that exact same way to me. Their defense lately has played, in the top third-ish in the WNBA. On the season, they're eighth. When they're looking like this version of this team, the Fever are wildly dangerous. So I think it's the continued progression of the defense. As with everything, there are going to be nights where it's up and nights where it's down, and if they give up 100 points on a given night, it shouldn't necessarily be a sign that the sky is falling. You want to see the trend line. You want to, over 10 games, 10 games, 15 games over the course of the season, you want to see that trending in the right direction. And I really think if this team can be in the top half, I understand there's not really a half when there's 15 teams, but in the top half defensively, and maybe creeping up even a little bit more than that, I think they're going to love where they finish in the season. I think they're going to love, where their seed is. And I think they're going to have a really, really good chance to contend for a championship. And I think there's only a handful of teams that you can say this about. And I truly, truly believe that the Fever are one of them and will continue to show that.
Pat, again, we thank you for your time so much, and I just one more for you before we get you out of here. We've made it, nearly 40 minutes now without mentioning this, or at the very least, only vaguely alluding to it. But you mentioned it. This is an unprecedented team in terms of media attention. Not all of it super pleasant at all times, and it's one of those things where since we had Caitlin come to town. This is something that the Indianapolis market has never really dealt with before in terms of being just that much of the center of attention. But it seems like every year it's like, man, the non-basketball noise just can't get any louder, and then year by year, it seems to, but you mentioned it earlier, there have been some real gut check moments for this team in this year. There have been some times when they really, really needed to be tough mentally. As somebody who is so close to the situation, how can you speak to how well this group has bonded together by all of the outside noise?
I do think it has a chance to bond them because it's a challenge that they're all kind of uniquely going through. And I give the players so much credit because look, like on one hand, having a big spotlight is great. It's great for the WNBA. It's great for the Fever. It's unbelievable how the spotlight has grown here for this team and for this franchise over the last few years. The problem is the basketball spotlight, and that's always going to follow a major spotlight, but just how massive that's been at times. I give the players so much credit. The thing I keep kind of saying throughout all of this is social media is not real life. It tends
Yep.
to be the loudest, the most vocal, at times the most, extreme opinions. If you just think about, the million people or so who might watch a Indiana Fever game on a given night, how many of those are the ones on Twitter and how many of those are the ones that they love the Fever? Maybe they came here, many of them, because of Caitlin Clark. They love watching her play. They want the Fever to win. And then that's kind of the end. I truly, truly believe that's the majority, but that's not the majority that's on social media. And perception is reality. And when these storylines and some of these narratives, I mean, I just continue to be blown away by how Caitlin has handled it. I think I've said this on with you guys at least once, but I mean, her ability to handle and navigate all of this at the level that she does continues to just absolutely blow me away. It's unbelievable. It's confounding. It's so impressive because she never says the wrong thing. She always handles every moment with grace and class. And it would be really easy to fall into a trap there. And not only does she not fall into a trap, but she sets the standard higher. And I think that allows her teammates to kind of follow in place when you've got a leader like that who is that good at all of this, at navigating all of it, speaking up for herself and her teammates when she needs to, maybe downplaying certain aspects of that aren't real when she needs to, I think are really important. And for this team, I just give them so much credit because it can't be easy. If it were me, I probably would delete Twitter and delete all social media. And I remember one time Caitlin talking about how she had to delete the news app on her phone, which like just was kind of depressing to even think about because
Wow.
like you can delete Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, but to need to delete the news app is just another level. But their ability, to side to be able to compartmentalize, to stay focused, it's been impressive. I think your angle is good. I think it has a way of bonding this group, and it continues, to be a focus because there will be more media storms coming. This we just because the
Maybe this week.
right. It's going to happen. It's just going to happen. We know it's going to happen. I wish it wasn't going to happen. I hope that I'm wrong, but it's going to happen. And being prepared for it and being as focused as you can be is massively important. And I think the players and the coaches have done a really good job at just trying to stay focused on basketball, understanding there is, it's freaking amazing that over 1 million people watch Indiana Fever games. How cool is that? And the just amazing aspect of that and the cool factor of that and the growth of that should not be overlooked or lost because of some of the worst aspects of social media either. I think it's important to compartmentalize the two and see the rapid growth and see everything that this team in this league and of course through Caitlin Clark joining the Fever and being a part of this city and this state have brought everybody. So it's at times a lot to navigate. But I continue to pinch myself every single day because I can't believe that, I get to have a seat on the bus for this unbelievable moment in time, this unbelievable ride. And right now, the bus is moving pretty well. It's moving pretty fast down the highway, and hopefully, it can keep the momentum going here. It's a big homestand coming up, guys. You've got 2 games against elite level teams, and 2 games against teams that are probably not going to make the playoffs, but playing better and can be dangerous. So I think you're going to get a chance to test yourself against a couple of the best teams, and a chance for those take care of business games against teams that don't want you to take care of business against them. So I'm really interested to see where things go from here. You have a great road trip, and all of a sudden you could look up and the Fever could be in third or something like that. So we'll see. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you guys for having me on. Appreciate everybody that follows along. I know it's not always the easiest thing. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in my Twitter mentions, I didn't even know you guys were on the game tonight. And that's hard because there always is another feed unless we're on Ion. So if you will allow me to indulge myself for a moment here, depending on when this goes out, July 15th against Golden State, we are on WTHR. 17th versus Seattle, we're on Ion. The 18th, we do not have that game. That's a national exclusive. The 22nd against Connecticut on WTHR. So except for the Saturday night game, will be on WTHR, or the Friday nights on Ion, and thrilled to have WTHR as a partner. They're such a great local station and local partner for us. And if you're watching the game and you pop up on YouTube TV and you happen to see that the Fever are playing, and it's not us, it might be that there is another broadcast going on, ours, and of course, wildly biased, but we would love if you flipped over to our broadcast as well. And, the numbers that we do locally here are just astonishing and so cool. So thank you guys again for having me on. It's always good to chat with both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was going to be my follow-up question as we kind of signed off here, is when will we hear you next on the broadcast? And so I appreciate you just doing my job for me and
roll your
going
thunder
right into that.
As an elite podcast host like yourself, I should have known to just give you the opportunity, but I snatched it from you.
Pat, I'm tired of talking. It feels great to have somebody else just do the talking for me because I do it almost every day. So, and people will be kind of shocked to hear me say that I'm tired of talking, but like that is the truth. I am just enjoying the listen. So, always enjoy your insight. And to be honest with you, I want to just say, for me and Pat, we're both St. Louis Cardinal fans. So I'm rocking the St. Louis Cardinals hat. Jordan Walker just won the home run derby, the first St. Louis Cardinal to ever do it. He's also going to be representing the Cardinals tonight in the All-Star game. So we're excited about that, Pat. I mean, people don't know this. I mean, I know you're a Ball State Cardinal, but like a St. Louis Cardinal fan too. You got 2 Cardinals in your life and, 2 Indiana basketball teams in your life.
I will admit that my fandom for the Cardinals has dropped off a lot just because for me, hang on, let me finish. You think I just owned Alex? Like, that's not how this is going to end, Casey.
Yeah. Thank you.
When I took this job, I just put all of my focus in, winter, and then into spring Pacers, and in the summer into Fever. And admittedly, when I'm sitting around and it's a night like tonight, the Fever aren't playing. But, well, this is a bad example because we're on All-Star break. But like, I'm always just turning the WNBA on because that helps me for my job, even if the Fever aren't playing, even if the Cardinals are playing. So, Alex, you could probably run laps around me in terms of Cardinals knowledge these days. But yes, I am a fan. I actually got the chance to go to a game for the first time in a while, back just before the start of the Fever season, which was fun. JJ Weatherholt hit a leadoff home run, which was cool. To see him do that. But if you asked me to do a similar podcast on the Cardinals, what are we at? About 40 some minutes here. I think I would last about 4 minutes on that podcast.
I would do about 7, but not much more.
No, you would school.
My wife was like, you should start a Cardinals podcast. That would do great. I said, do you really want me to do more than I'm already doing right now? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I'm doing, at least 1 Fever show a week, maybe 2, 5 Pacer shows, plus all the articles. I don't have time for this.
A man can only break so much news, folks.
Well, I'm not breaking news. But if you want to bet on LeBron James to the Pacers, you heard it here first. I'll just put it that way. So, Pat, appreciate your time. And of course, we're going to get you over on Setting the Pace as well to talk Pacers, get your thoughts on the offseason moves that they've had. But, anything else you'd like to plug before we sign off here?
No, just appreciate you guys very much. It's good to have another Fever podcast in the Fever realm. So we appreciate what you guys do regularly, both for Fever and for Pacers, and hope to maybe come on and chat with you guys maybe a little over a month, once we have maybe a more firm kind of playoff picture. This is really a key, stretch in the season. I always think that third quarter of a season, whether it's NBA or WNBA, is so vital because, okay, you set the table here, a good third quarter, and you're set for a strong finish. We're into the third quarter now. The Fever have set themselves up for a good third quarter, good start to the third. But we'll maybe talk to you guys in the fourth quarter of the season and hash out where things look then.
Sounds good to me, Casey. I'm excited for that, and can't wait to see the Fever continue just to ride this hot momentum they got, and hopefully they can keep that going before they hit the brakes. So, Pat, appreciate your time, and Fever Nation, we will talk to you all later this week. Hope you all have a good one.